Hello, everyone. Welcome to Courageous Custody Real Stories, Real Solutions, your weekly dose of empowerment and practical guidance.
Hi, we understand the unique challenges protective parents face in the courtroom, and our mission is to equip you with the strategic thinking and emotional support that you need when you're navigating this difficult journey so that you can do that with strength and resilience. So, if you're a protective parent facing seemingly impossible custody battle, you are not alone.
Every Thursday, Instagram and Facebook, bringing you real stories. So, hear inspiring stories about courageous parents who have walked in your shoes and emerged victorious in big ways and small, and expert advice. Get practical strategies from us to help you advocate for your children and manage your trauma as you go through your custody case.
Yeah, so don't miss out on getting your own insights from our conversations because we'd love for you to jump in. We want to hear your comments. And as we chat, we want to know what you think. So remember, courage is contagious, and together we can rewrite the narrative for our protective parents. So let's dive in. What's our case today?
Yes. So, just before we jump in, I always want to say for people who are
Right.
listening to us and really seeking something from us, we're not giving legal advice and we're not giving therapy.
Right. And if you're feeling triggered, though, we do want you to take care of yourself. So step away if you need to, go grab a drink of water, maybe take some deep breaths, and come back and join us again. And today's topic is ways to fight the narcissist narrative that you are mentally unstable.
Yes.
Use that
Yes.
one, folks.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's
and
Health Awareness Month. So we
it
want to
is.
discuss it. Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, address the surprising and not so surprising ways that this comes up in family courts during a custody dispute because it is so common, is it not?
Oh my goodness. It's we call it part of the abuser's playbook, right? They
Mhm.
come in and they basically have, there's five things that they always come in with for accusations. There's abuse, but there's also it's largely about mental instability. They like to talk about PPD, postpartum depression. They like to talk about Munchausen, which we'll talk a little bit about later, mental health, all kinds of things, depression, anxiety. So let's go ahead and talk about the case study. For this week, our case study is a cautionary tale. Lizbeth is the one we'll talk about today. She was a regional account manager. She had a bombastic personality, and we have a lot of moms who come to us, a lot of parents who say, "Well, this is just who I am. I'm Italian. I'm someone who's always been a performer, whatever it might be." There's a reason that they have this so-called big personality. Many times what we find is that these moms have a wonderful like balance between their masculine and feminine energies, and so there's that stronger masculine energy, but she was very in tune with her femininity as well. And her husband turned out to be a freeloader, and he tried to walk away with everything: the house, the possessions, the money, the pensions, the custody, all of it. Her 14-year-old boy ended up being brainwashed to believe that the mother abandoned him. And the 12-year-old girl was brainwashed to believe that the hammer that her ex threatened her with, Lizbeth, was what Lizbeth had threatened her daughter with. Just a total fabrication, just total revisionism. And he and she, the daughter, had a whole detailed story about it that she would tell the court when asked. So that made it seem very real. So Lizbeth was accused of mental instability. She was called a liar. She was deemed a threat to the children by her co-parent. He said she was abusive. He said she had postpartum, and he said that she had factitious disorder imposed on another, previously known as factitious disorder by proxy, previously known as Munchausen syndrome by proxy. And that's, by the way, I just want to pause. I'm going to say the factitious disorder imposed on another is the latest version of the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders, or the DSM-5. So Lisbeth ended up being put on supervised visits. And boy, is this going to sound familiar to so many of our protective parents. The children were coached before supervision so that they would not even hug Lisbeth. When she tried, they would shy away. The supervisor would note, writing it down, that the children were afraid of Lizbeth and that she went crazy at that point. Lizbeth admittedly did try to force the hug. She asked them, what's going on? Why would they not hug her? And she did try to hug them again. She talks about this, and it was noted as mental instability, even by the people who are supposed to be helping and protect her children. The guardian ad litem, let's add her into this. She noted Lizbeth's personality in all of her reports and that she did seem mentally unhealthy, according to the guardian ad litem. But interestingly enough, the guardian ad litem could not specify why, except that the mother kept talking about her ex's abuse of her and the children. So, look, this was a long journey for Lizbeth. This narrative, this same thing kept happening and just cycling, just happening again and again for over a year. It's important to note that her appearances in court, the way that she showed up in court, just supported that narrative, right? Remember that bombastic personality I talked about? She was very big and she was angry, and there's total injustice here. Her ex was fooling everybody, and she was doing her best to get the court to understand that. And that's sort of how she appeared in court. There was anger, there was frustration, there was that sense of injustice, there was that bombastic personality. We worked with Elizabeth for months, and we finally found a way to help her to appear calm. But I want to say she did end up needing extra professionals to testify. We helped her find professionals to show that she wasn't mentally unhealthy, that she was actually going through PTSD. And we found even one professional who did attribute it to the marriage and the way that she was treated by her ex. And what she did was she overcame the narrative. And here's how. She owned her mental health by attributing it to the divorce and showing concrete ways that she was correcting that. Now, for those of you who are just listening, maybe my voice is intoning that I'm using a lot of air quotes here because, look, it was kind of hard for Elizabeth to say, look, this isn't really true, right?
Mhm.
And so we had to make the conscious decision to say, the truth isn't working with family court. So maybe in order for you to be able to see your children again and remind them of who you truly are versus what your ex's constant narrative is of you, maybe you give them what they need in a way that works for you and gets you your kids back or access to your children back. And you can start to move forward, and these kids can move forward with you. Because look, it does come down to how you're appearing in court versus what is going on as you go through this case. So this was what she kind of went through. And the concrete steps that I talked about is, she got a therapist whenever they recommended something for her, a class, a course, a program. She did it. She did it as soon as possible. And she made sure that she did it in a way where it wasn't just on video. She was interacting with an instructor for whatever kind of course or program that the court wanted to see, who could then report back that Lizbeth actually did an amazing job and appeared calm and had a great journey. But, I think the important thing to turn to here, given that it's Mental Health Awareness Month, is to talk about this. So, Atra, what do you see as the emotional journey for a protective parent, female or male? Because look, we know that about 10 to 15% of domestic violence victims are male, and that half of those male victims have a female perpetrator, right? And half of them have a male perpetrator as well. But what is this emotional journey that they're going through that can lead to the mental health? Although I would posit that they're going to pull that out all the time, but actually more so that lends itself to showing the court that false mental instability narrative is perhaps true.
So what lends to it being true? Well, let's talk about the emotional journey from a standpoint of what our clients are experiencing, right? Male or female. The very first thing that comes up is this sense of betrayal. So there's a shock, right? And then there's what's confusion, lots of confusion. And then there's this sense of shock, right? Of sort of realizing what's happening again. And then this betrayal, the sense of anger, the sense of, how could you do this to me?
Yeah.
The betrayal part is really, really strong because it's, you and I made a promise to do this way. And now all of a sudden you're breaking that for these reasons that are false. There's this narrative that you've created. So the betrayal piece is where often I find our clients sort of sitting in the not accepting that they've been betrayed, like the
Mm.
they're not being able to not really process the betrayal. Like, I can't believe it. There's this rumination of, and he did this, or and she did this, and then it's just over and over and over, and it prevents them from getting into the acceptance piece, because once there's an acceptance involved in that, and grief is not linear, because there's grief here too.
Mm.
And when they're going through, this is one of the things that lends to it, when they're going through this high custody court evaluation, you can't process your grief at the same time that you're going through that. And that is hard work. It's not like the family court is going to stop everything and go, you've been betrayed. You're really angry about it. So let's go ahead and pause all of this stuff that overwhelms you with this person trying to take your child away from you, and let you have your time and your moment of healing.
Mhm.
They don't do that. And
No.
so our clients have to stuff, compartmentalize. And they're often even gaslit or shamed, because they're gaslit and shamed of, well, if that's what's going on for you, go get a therapist. You need professional help. And then when you do get a therapist, it's then weaponized against you in court. So it's
Yeah,
like, oh, we can't help you with that here. Go get a therapist. Oh, you got a therapist? Aha, see, there's
that's right.
something wrong with you. And it's a betrayal again. It's a betrayal all over again. So everywhere they're turning, they're left feeling that they can't do the right thing, that there's no way that they can get their kids back. And they're just trying so hard, and they're exhausted. They're mentally exhausted, they're emotionally exhausted, and they're physically exhausted. And from a nervous system standpoint, when we've adapted to this sympathetic state of just sort of fight, flight, just being in this place, which is good because we're mobile, we're moving, we're trying to figure it out, go somewhere. But it's when it's that collapse, it's that sort of dorsal, sort of like, I'm exhausted. I just can't do this. I can't fight anymore. I don't have any more money. I'm losing my mind. This is just because it really is, unless you are someone who has been through it. And we
Mhm.
talk about this in our weekly mindset. Unless
Mhm.
you're someone who's been through it, you don't get the support that normalizes your experience. And
No.
that's when our clients come together and they normalize each other's experience, because people who go through this are often isolated and left alone, and then sort of being tricked into thinking that it is their fault. So it's a constant re-traumatization, it's a constant shame begetting shame, and all they want to do is have some sort of quote unquote, I'm going to use the quotes too, normal life again, where
Right.
they were just able to support their kid. And instead of spending all of this energy, battling the court, battling the ex, battling the shame that they're experiencing inside, and never once being able to tap into the grief of the fact that they've been betrayed and that they feel betrayed.
No, because we end up seeing a lot of moms who, as they're trying to put together their case, as they're doing their case prep, we hear a lot of like, couldn't really do anything this week. I couldn't bring myself to do it. I couldn't even get out of bed one of those mornings, right? And when you talk about betrayal, in my mind, I guess my question is, what I feel like I'm seeing is, yes, there's the betrayal of the abuse of having married somebody, been with somebody who turned out to be abusive, but I think there's this huge betrayal with family court where it's
Yeah.
like, on TV, you think everybody thinks, oh, you go to court and justice is served. And it's like, but that's not how it works. That's not how it looks. The way it even goes, even the cycles of it feel like betrayal, I would say, for a lot of these parents. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like they go through that, then they're told to go do this from the court, and then they go do that, and it's weaponized against them. So it's a betrayal all over
All
again.
around, right? It's like, yeah,
Yes,
yeah. And then for
everywhere
Lizbeth,
betrayal.
even her kids are betraying her, even though it's not really them doing the betrayal. It
Right,
feels like it, right?
right. Yeah, every time because their kids are going through their own experience, and so they get to, whomever has said whatever they've said to the child, and then the child comes back to them, and it's, well, that's not how our relationship was before all of this went down. And
Yeah.
so there's a betrayal there,
Yep.
right? There's that
Yep.
betrayal there. So yeah, so it is an emotional journey. That is the best two words to describe it, because it is a journey. There's never a time where we've just arrived, because even after it's done, as long as this person is involved in their life, as far
Mm,
as a parent that they have to parallel parent with or
yep.
co-parent with, they are still on that journey.
Yep. 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 Thank you for bringing that up. Now, and I'm going to ask you this. What do you think, given, oh, she's mentally unstable. Oh, she's this. Oh, she's that. Given everything you've just described, what do you think? What do you see that shows up most in court to these court professionals and with the court professionals that they're meeting with, like the evaluator, the guardian ad litem, et cetera, due to this betrayal, due to this journey that they're going through?
What do you mean? What I think shows up most in court as far as from the
What do you
person?
find yeah, what do you find when they're showing up? What is the court seeing? Because I know I've got my list of, like, here's what the court's seeing when you're like this, but from
Yes.
your perspective, what are you seeing, with these betrayed, traumatized parents that lends itself straight into that false mental instability narrative?
Sure. So remember when I was saying earlier that, there's all these emotions that get processed, and there's no space to actually process those emotions because they've got to deal with, the hearing or the filing or the motion, all these court things that are happening. So what we know about the nervous system is, our body is adapted to handle stress, but our body is adapted also to discharge that stress, right?
Mhm.
In some sort of way. And when there is not a space to discharge that stress, whatever that is, when there's not a space to, pick up and go outside, or, get some sleep. Sleep is a big way to discharge stress.
Mhm.
And our
Mhm.
moms don't, our protective parents don't get a lot of sleep.
They do not.
So when they don't have those spaces, what shows up in court when a narrative is being said about you is that stress can be discharged in court. So, it'll come out in body language, it'll come out in tone, it'll come out in words that are said when they're on the stand. It'll, there's literally like a microscope on the protective parent in the courtroom, and it's like that microscope is tracking to go, aha, see, that's why you're not okay. You're unbalanced. You're unstable.
Yeah.
You're emotionally dysregulated. Oh, you have to go to see a therapist because you're experiencing triggers and emotional dysregulation. Aha, you've just admitted you're emotionally dysregulated. And so that's what, it's not funny, but it's just you have to laugh because it is such a twist, right? It's such a twist. It is taking what people experience in a normal reaction. Your body is supposed to react. It's supposed to have an aversion to wanting to be under this pressure of stress.
Right.
What it's not wanting is nowhere to put that and nowhere to go. And so oftentimes they don't plan on it happening because trauma is stored in the body. So
Yeah.
cognitively, these clients show up to court and they think they have it all together when they haven't addressed what their body is. And these are autonomic responses, right? So it's not like I'm going to think and it's not like when they have an outburst, if there is an outburst, or if they're upset, or if their face looks, or if they cry, if they break out and cry, that is an autonomic response. They don't think, oh, I'm going to cry at this moment. It just happens because they've had no place to grieve. They've
Yeah.
had no place to yell,
Mhm.
had no
Mhm.
place to get that out.
I think that's important. Okay, so look, we know that Lisbeth, over the course of a year's worth of court appearances, I think it was about 4 or 5 court appearances, if memory serves, that she did bring it. She really played into that narrative. And her case got worse and worse and worse. And we know that it gets compounded so that every time you come in, they've still got this long memory somehow of the way that you appeared, right? Yes, she was able to turn things around and she's still in it and she's slowly making it better. But what then could she like, I love to talk about these tools to help people in these moments, right? I talk about having some sort of a stone in your hands, a real touchstone, having some sort of a gem bracelet, something like that. But what you're describing is we absolutely see this all the time, is something where you do think you've got these tangible tools. You do think you're prepared. You do think you're ready for what's to come. But yeah, it's as you say, then you get triggered. So then in my mind, then what we're looking at when we're working with these protective parents is, what is it that you're doing to really forge yourself against the reactions you're talking about, against walking into the courtroom, believing you've got this, and then playing right into the mental instability hands? What are the things, what are the practices to put into place that, our protective parents who are listening right can start right now, that they need to start right now in order to truly, truly be in a grounded space throughout an entire court appearance?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I really appreciate you asking, because even the tools that we give them to use in court so that it can mitigate those feelings and those emotions that may come up when they're triggered, even those tools are band-aids,
Yeah,
right? Those tools are band-aids. They're
helpful,
not
but yeah,
helpful, and it may stop the bleeding, temporarily, but the wound is still there,
yeah.
right? Trauma is stored in the body. And so we know those wounds are still there. And what you're talking about is, how can we help them address those wounds? And that's a lot of the work that you and I do, as far as coaching with strategy and coaching with mindset, and involving the body in that. One of the biggest things is, so many of our protective moms are not comfortable or familiar with the emotion of anger.
Yeah.
And, it has been documented that many, many diseases that show up later in life in the body are the one thing that most of those people have had in common, particularly females, is they are the caregivers of their relationship. They're the caregivers and the nurturers in the family. And they did not express anger in healthy ways. It was
Mhm.
literally, I'm okay. I'm not going to be angry at all. I'm good. And everybody else is good around me. So when it comes to our protective moms, even feeling comfortable with the fact that they were betrayed and getting to the point of being angry about it, it takes them a while. You and
Yeah.
I have seen that. It
Mhm.
takes them a while.
Mhm.
So to have sort of this acceptance that this happened to me and I'm mad about it, right? And I have a space to talk about it and process that. It's just releasing it using your voice. A lot of our protective moms have not been able to take up space and let their voice be heard. And so having their voice be heard and having someone hold space and witness that, whatever emotion comes up, whether it's anger, whether it's fear, whatever it is, that's one of the ways that we can start to begin to tiptoe towards addressing and healing the wound. It's most of the time, it's, you've been taught to be small and not take up space and to only take care of others. And so what does it look like to actually take up that space and use your voice? The flip side of that, right, is our moms that are comfortable with their emotions and have used their voice and so forth. They've been told they're too much.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They've been told they're too much, right? So the flip side of that is being in space with people who can hold that and can say, you're not too much. you know what, you're actually not too much, and
Mhm.
being told that they're not, and counter shaming that what they've been told. So it's really good to help women and men, to just really take up space and get to know and hear their own voice.
Mhm.
So there's anger, there's acceptance of the anger, and not just acceptance of the anger, but acceptance that the betrayal has happened. And this is sort of the new normal, as you and I have talked about before. So there's an anger, I call it the 3 A's, right? You've got this thing of anger that has got to be addressed, acceptance that this is the new normal, and an acknowledgement that this is suffering, that this sucks and it doesn't feel great. And that can sort of help tap into the grief that you will eventually have to process, because it's different for everybody.
So one thing that I would put in here then is that usually, like when I first start working, when a parent first finds me, right? Probably the dominant emotion they're going through is fear, just terror that they're going to lose their children, and that more than that, that their children are going to have to spend any time really or all their time with their abuser. So I guess a question that comes up for me is, when you're going through this court case, the terror is just there all the freaking time, right? And so how do they get to that point where they accept their anger and learn and express it, and then learn how to express it properly so it
Love
doesn't
this
look like
question.
mental instability or injustice? How, when they're in constant terror from post-separation abuse, domestic violence by proxy through their children, court date after court date after court date, meeting with court professionals, and they're just coming to each of these things, many moments of their days, as they describe it, are filled with terror, if not fear. So how then to reach a place, how then, what can they be doing? Who can they be seeing? Who can they be working with to get to the point where they can grapple with anger and learn how to express it and go through it?
Yeah. Oftentimes, a lot of them are afraid of their own anger, right? So that
Yes.
fear,
Oh, that was me.
they are afraid of their own anger. So there's fear. There's so many points of fear, right? Fear of the future, of the future looks like, fear of the court system and doing the wrong thing, fear of the abuser abusing again, either you or your kids. Afraid of yourself because you don't even know how to trust yourself anymore, because you're the one who picked to marry this person. So
Mm,
what do you even know? So you don't even trust your own discernment. So there's lots of fear that's going on. And so in order to, and me being using the IFS modality, we talk in terms of parts. And so it's really sitting with the fear, acknowledging the fear, and accepting that it's in the system, and befriending it. I know this sounds probably wild, right? But in internal family systems, we talk about befriending the fear so that these parts of us that are being burdened by this fear can
mm,
really be held by us. We have something called a self inside of us that is full of courage, that is full of compassion, that is full of clarity, all these things that we need to battle a custody evaluation in court case, right? So trauma disrupts our ability to access all of that. But once we're in space with someone who can validate to us and reflect back to us, I hear that clarity piece in you. I hear that piece in you that does have some courage. Oh, I hear that compassion that you have for your own suffering.
mm,
It's
mm,
really being like self-led, in a sense of having some self-compassion and knowing that having the fear is okay. Because what happens is I'm afraid. And so there are two folds. Either I'm afraid, there's an acknowledgement in it, but that fear may overwhelm me. So I don't even tap into what I'm feeling of the fear, or I'm afraid and I tap into it too much and I'm not able to move at all.
mhm.
So either way, there's a stuffing and a repression of emotions going on.
Yeah.
And feeling the fear and being able to feel the fear to where it doesn't overwhelm and you don't repress it in a safe space is what needed. So find an IFS trained practitioner who can help with
Mm,
parts and dealing with those types of things, because emotions burden our parts. They're not sort of our parts. There are parts of us that fear, particularly whichever fear I just named earlier, chances are those types of fear, this isn't the first time that our clients have felt it. They've probably had a long relationship with fear and how it's showed up in their system.
Agreed. And, I want to say I have, as someone who has done that work, I think it's so important to note that, man, does it take a lot of time and a lot of courage. It is not something where you're going to get there like that. And I'm just so glad that I trusted the process. And I really encourage others to just grab the bull by the horns if you're able to, and just get in there and do that.
And it's hard to do while you're in the middle of a custody eval or
And that's the thing,
custody.
is that there's always the fear is being recycled. And
Yes.
so I think it's, yeah, yeah. Well, look, this being Mental Health Awareness Month, I know that throughout this month, we're going to spend the majority of this month on our Thursday Courageous Custody episodes to talk about this, but I really feel like we can go on forever just right now. So I'm glad that we're going to be returning to different aspects of this throughout the month of May. But I guess let's go ahead and chat about what we've got for takeaways. We want you to look for an IFS practitioner, and ATRA IFS stands for
Internal family systems.
right. And we want you to be working on how can you ground yourself before you ever get in that courtroom, even with, the tools that you're bringing in with you. Get yourself to a point where you're as grounded as possible, even while being triggered. Next week, join us again at 7 p.m. Eastern here. Like or follow or bookmark. Those of you who see us on YouTube, please click that bell so that you'll know when we're coming and you'll know what more we've got to say on these and other topics, and you can get the notifications and not miss a thing, because what we're talking about might catch you just when you need it. Don't forget to check the comments to get a free copy of the court appearance prep list. And you can go to thecustodyblueprint.com to learn about the different ways to get help in your case and work with both me and ATRA.
Yeah. And we want you to leave your own comments about your experience with this topic and any topics that you'd like us to discuss in the future. And wherever you're listening, we really want you to remember that you're not alone. We want you to stay strong, stay informed, and keep fighting for what matters most. So see you next week.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.